Hare Krishna, Dandavat Pranam, Guru Maharaj, our humble
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna Maharaj.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. Hare Krishna
Hare
Guru
Bol,
Maharaj.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna Guru Maharaj, please accept my humble obeisances.
Hare Krishna Maharaj.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna
Krishna
Maharaj,
Maharaj.
please accept my humble obeisance.
Please accept my humble obeisance at Lord's feet, Maharaj.
Please accept my humble obeisances.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna Guru Maharaj.
Hare Bol, Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Dandavat Pranam ji.
Dandavat Pranam.
So, Hare Krishna Maharaj, we welcome you again for this 5th or the 6th session, particularly on the 16th chapter. We thank you very much for taking your time and giving us your valuable association and also the teachings that we are getting from you, which are indeed gainfully helping us in our devotional life. So we're very grateful, Maharaj. Without much ado, Maharaj, we would request that we continue on the chapter 16. I think we've done the first 4 verses and then...
Yeah, today is the 5th verse.
5th verse, Maharaj. So without much ado, over to you, Maharaj. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Om Jnana Trivandasya Jnananjana Salakaya Chakshuzanmritam Yena Tasmai Sri Guruve Namaha Vanchakalpatrubhyasya Kripa Sindhu Vyecha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavyo Namo Namaha. Jai Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So today we are studying the 16th chapter, text 5. Devi Sampada Vimokshaya Nibandha Suri Mata Masucha Sampadam Devim Abhijato Sri Pandava. The transcendental qualities are conducive to liberation, whereas demoniac qualities make for bondage. Do not worry, O son of Pandu, for you are born with the divine qualities. Purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivinoda Swami Prabhupada. Lord Krishna encouraged Arjuna by telling him that he was not born with demoniac qualities. His involvement in the fight was not demoniac, because he was considering the pros and cons. He was considering whether respectable persons such as Bhishma and Drona should be killed or not. So he was not acting under the influence of anger, false prestige, or harshness. Therefore, he was not of the quality of the demons. For a Kshatriya, a military man, shooting arrows at the enemy is considered transcendental, and refraining from such a duty is demoniac. Therefore, there was no cause for Arjuna to lament. Anyone who performs the regulative principles of the different orders of life is transcendentally situated. Hare Krishna. So here we can see in this 16th chapter, which is specifically discussing about the qualities of divinity and demoniac. So here Prabhupada is very clearly mentioning that Arjuna was not at all of any demoniac qualities, and therefore he was perfectly situated. And Lord Krishna is encouraging him that there is nothing wrong for you to fight in this battle. Now, sometimes people question us that, in Bhagavad Gita, Krishna is encouraging Arjuna to fight. And the Bhagavad Gita also at the same time is spoken under the circumstances of war. So where is this so-called peacefulness and loving exchanges which is described in Krishna consciousness? So we kind of try to figure out what is the reality here. But here in this verse, it is very clearly mentioned by Prabhupada, and also Krishna is saying that if one performs one's duty according to one's dharma, then that is considered to be transcendental. And also here, Prabhupada is saying that for Arjuna to fight in the battle, it was not contrary to religious principles. On the contrary, it was conducive for his spiritual life, and it was considered transcendental. So we find ourselves sometimes in a similar dilemma that in our day-to-day activities, we kind of we find ourselves in a situation where sometimes we cannot make up our mind whether the activity which we will perform will be in line with devotional service or it will be contrary to devotional service. And many times we see that in our own lives, we are performing many different activities, especially those who are householders. They are duty bound to perform many activities to maintain the household life. And in order to maintain a household life, of course, they have to get a job or they have to have a business and they have to work on a livelihood so that they can function in society. Unlike the sannyasis who are considered mendicants, they do not have to worry about getting a job. All they do is, in a traditional sense, they preach. And when you preach, automatically, Krishna will take care of you in a sense that Prabhupada explains in one verse, that one who is fully surrendered to Krishna and is dedicated his life fully in the service of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's mission, then Sri Krishna himself will take care of all his material needs. Now I can give my own example, that when I became a devotee in ISKCON, I had no concept of Varnashram system. All I knew was that I'm giving up my materialistic endeavors and I'm joining the ashram to become a sannyasi, a sadhu. That is generally in our Indian culture, or I would say more specific to Gujarati culture. That when you leave your home and you join a guru and take his shelter, that means that you have basically you have taken sannyas. So that was my understanding when I joined the ashram. Of course, later on through experience, understand that it is not just that we are sannyasis, but we have a basic training in the beginning, and then we are given options whether you can continue as a brahmacharya life, and then later on take sannyas for dedicating full-time preachers, or you may get married and live a householder's life. Anyway, the point is that in the Varnashram system, sannyasis generally don't work. They are taken care of by the devotees and well-wishers. So in our case, in our institute, we preach, and a lot of people who are well-wishers, they give contributions to the society, and that society's contribution is then kind of used for serving the devotees. So in this relation, there is a story of one sannyasi, guru. He is recommending his disciple that in order for you to develop spiritually strongly, you need to go away from the hustle and bustle of the city. So I recommend that you go to a quiet forest and you find a place where you can peacefully sit down by a water body or a flowing river. So every day, your necessities of water will be taken care of. Especially, we need water for drinking and also bathing. Now, the instruction was very simple to this young man. So you go and find a quiet location and you simply chant the holy names as I have prescribed to you. So the young man, he is without question, because he's dedicated to the spiritual master. And he said the spiritual master, when he instructs the disciple, spiritual master knows the best. Although the disciple may not understand at the time the instructions. So anyway, this young man, he took this instruction to his heart and he went to the forest. And he found himself a very nice, peaceful, quiet location. There is a beautiful flowing river. So he sat down under a tree, which is full of maturity. So he's got lots of leaves and it's giving nice shady area. So underneath the tree, he sits down and he begins to chant the holy name of the Lord. And he's chanting the holy name of the Lord. And all day he's chanting, and then there's nothing to eat. But he said, my guru told me that don't worry. You simply sit there and you chant. Supreme Lord Shri Krishna will take care of the rest. So he was sitting peacefully, and obviously night came. So he made his preparation to sleep underneath the tree. Now he was thinking, I've been chanting all day, following my guru's instructions. But I haven't got anything to eat yet. What will happen? But he said, no, my guru told me that I have to do this, so I will go to sleep now. He went to sleep. And then next morning he woke up. He went to the river. He refreshed himself, took a dip in the river, came out. And when he came out, his clothes were all soaking wet. Now, of course, even though he is in exclusion, in isolation in the forest, still for a devotee, it is not dignifying to sit naked while the clothes are getting dry. So he sat down in his wet clothes and he started chanting. And as he was chanting, word spread around the villages near the forest, saying there's a great saintly person who is doing tapasya here. We should go and seek his blessing. So many of the young villagers, they came to seek the blessings of this sadhu, this young man, who's performing his austerities of chanting holy names. Now, our traditional custom is that when you go to see a holy man, you take some dakshina. Now, generally, it's not a favorable thing to give dakshina in terms of money, but they take in terms of food. So some people brought some food grains, some people brought vegetables, some brought fruits, and everything was brought to him. And he was just peacefully chanting, and all of a sudden he had so much food given to him that more than he would require in a day's meal. So he understood that because he was following the instruction of the spiritual master, all these grains and fruits and vegetables were supplied by Krishna through these villages. And of course, the villagers with folded hands seek their blessings. And the saintly person says, yes, thank you very much for all this you have brought. May Krishna bless you with all happiness. And then they went away. And now the young man is chanting and he said, okay, since I've brought, food has been brought to me, I will gather some dry twigs and branches from around, make a little fire and cook something in a clay pot which was brought there by the villagers. And he cooked himself a little simple food. You know, he put water from the river, rice and dal and vegetables in the pot, and he cooked like a simple khichdi. And he offered that to Krishna, and then he took that as his nourishment, and he sat down and was chanting peacefully. So now he's thinking, my stomach is full of food. I have no anxiety, no hunger. And I am so happy that the blessings of my spiritual master is there, that he told me, don't worry, Krishna will take care of you. And I can see how these things have been manifesting. Krishna is taking care of me. So he was peacefully sitting there. And a few days later, more villagers came to seek his blessings. And they brought some more provisions. At this time, he was feeling a little uncomfortable because every day for 2-3 hours he has to sit in wet clothes. So naturally the villagers, after bringing food as a provision, they asked the young man, is there anything else we can do for you? And he said, not really. I have everything. You are very kind. You are bringing me all the food grains and vegetables. I have everything I require for my sadhana bhakti here. But it is a little uncomfortable in the morning after taking my bath that I have to sit in wet clothes for 2-3 hours before they naturally dry. So the villagers said, that's not a problem. So the villagers brought him one set of dhoti kurta. So now he has one set of dhoti kurta he's wearing and one he washes every day. So he's drying his cloth and he's peacefully sitting there chanting. And while he's chanting, the rats in the forest would come and nibble at his cloth. So he became concerned that if the rats start eating the cloth, there will be so many holes in there. So he gets up and he shoos away the rats and then again sits down. And it's a regular affair. Every few minutes he has to get up to shoo away the rats. So he was saying, this is not very good. It is disturbing my chanting and peacefulness of my sadhana, and I'm getting disturbed. So a few days later, villagers come and say, is everything okay now? We are very happy. You please continue. And by your presence, we are feeling that all our villages are getting blessed and are getting a lot of auspiciousness by your powerful austerities here. So then they again said, is there anything else we can do for you to make your situation comfortable? Because we are so happy that by your austerities, our villages are very peaceful and flourishing very nicely. So he said, not really, I have got everything, but I get disturbance of these rats coming and nibbling away at my cloth. So the villagers said, that is not a problem. We'll bring you a cat. So they brought a village cat and left the cat with the young man. So the cat is sitting there. And since the cat is sitting there, the rats would not come anywhere near the cloth because there is some kind of a smell which the cat emits. And that is creating fear in the rats. So the rats stayed away and the young man was peacefully chanting his holy name. And as he's chanting, and very peacefully, hours went by. And after a few hours, of course, the cat is hungry now. So she's meowing, meowing, meowing. And the young man thinks, oh, cat is feeding. I must feed the cat because as a devotee, he is full of compassion. He cannot see someone in distress. So he gets up and he walks around to find some coward men who are grazing their cows in the forest, and he requests them, that, sir, I have this little cat. I need to feed the cat. Can you just spare a little milk for my cat? So the villagers were quite happy because they know that this saintly person is creating, performing tapasya, and by his austerities, all goodness is prevailing all around the villages in the different forests, different villages around the forest. So they very happily gave him some milk. He brought the milk and he gave the cow, the cat, and cat was drinking the milk and very happily sitting there. But this has become an everyday affair now. He has to go looking for some cows every day so he can bring little milk for the cat. So again, there is disturbance in his chanting and peacefully performing the instructions of his spiritual master. So then again, the villagers come and say, is there anything else we can do for you? He's saying, yes, I have this difficulty of feeding the cat because it requires feeding and I cannot go every time and run around looking for milk. It disturbs my time. So they said, that is not also a problem. We'll bring you a cow. So they brought a cow from the village. So now he has a cow. Every day he can milk the cow and feed the cat. And everything is looking very nice, comfortable situation now. But unfortunately, the cow also needs feeding. So he has to take the cow for grazing. So he takes the cow for grazing, and while he's grazing, he's chanting, but his attention is to the cow. The cow doesn't run away. So now the chanting is done, and the cow is there, and the cat is there, cloth is there. One by one, all his kind of difficulties are taken care of. But on the contrary, as his, more and more provisions are increasing, more and more difficulties are increasing. So here, the villagers came again and said, dear Swamiji, everything okay now? Do you need something else? He said, look, every day I have to feed the cow and then milk the cow and feed the cat. So my clothes are kept away from the rat. And then I have dry dhoti to sit in. but it's consuming too much of my time. So the villagers said, that is not a problem. We have very beautiful young girls in our village. We'll marry you to one of them, and then she will come here and she'll take care of your cow and your cat and your cloth, and you'll be a happy man just sitting there and chanting, and she'll cook for you. So young man thinking, that is not a bad concept. It will provide everything for me, and I can sit down and still chant the rounds of the holy name as prescribed by my guru. And I'll be doing my duty, and fulfilling all these things. So happily, the village brought a beautiful young chaste lady who is very, very sincere. And she said, here is a young man, he will look after you, and you look after him. And so he said, there's nothing wrong, because he justifies this thing. In the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, Chaturvarna Maya system, guna karma vibhaga. The 4 varnas and 4 ashrams are created by the Supreme Lord. So there's nothing wrong for me to get in the next stage, to get married and become a householder, a grihastha life. So he is now married, and he is peacefully there. And for 2-3 months, the young lady is performing tapasya there in the forest, cooking for him, taking care of the cow, milking the cow, feeding the cat, and his clothes are all taken care of. All these things are fine. And after 2-3 months, the young lady says, you are a renunciate. You can live like this in the forest, but see, we are married now. We need a house. And maybe after some time we'll have children. So we have to prepare for these things. So the young man says, the best way to provide for all this is get a job. So he takes his cow and his cat and his cloth and his little young wife, and he goes to the city, gets himself a job, rents an apartment. So the wife is happy in the apartment, and the cow is in the courtyard, and the cat is quite happy, and everything is looking very nice. And the poor chap, he can't chant any rounds around because he has to go to work for more 8-9 hours a day. Then he comes home and he cannot chant because he has to take care of many other household duties. The point here is that we think that if we get more and more provisions, more and more facilities, life will be much more easier and much more practical for us to perform our devotional service. But with this young man's story, we can understand that more and more comfort he was getting, more and more provisions he was getting, it was getting more and more difficult for him now to give quality time for his sadhana bhakti. And some days later, when the spiritual master was in the city, and he was going down with his followers, and he saw this young man, and he called the young man, saying, young man, what are you doing in the city? I told you to go to the forest and find a peaceful place and perform these austerities for your own spiritual development. And he said, Gurudev, what can I do? See, I was sitting there, I had, discomfort in wet clothes, so I got a cat and a set of dhoti, and then for the cat, I got the cow, and for the cow, to look after milking and all these, I got a wife, and now I to protect and provide for the wife. I cannot do injustice to the wife because the instructions were given to me, not to the wife. So therefore, I have to follow this and provide for, because that is my duty. And the Bhagavad Gita says that if you neglect your duty, your dharma, then it is adharma. So I did not want to become entangled in adharma. So I was doing my duty. But the spiritual master said, it is very fine what you are saying, but you neglected your first instruction. I told you just peacefully go and do your chanting and develop some spiritual strength for performing these austerities. But instead, you got entangled more and more and more, thinking that more and more provisions you get, the more and more you will become free, and your time will be spent for performing devotional service. So of course, it all went wrong. So the moral of the story is that in our own existence, when we are awakened to spirituality and we come to Krishna consciousness, we are not in a luxury situation where we have the luxury of living a renunciate life. Most of us, we are duty bound to follow our duty as householders, provide our needs for the household. and all the provision which comes along with that. So we have to work and do all these things. So we have to perform our duty. So just like here, Krishna is saying in this verse to Arjuna that to fight, there's nothing wrong. Because that, as a Kshatriya, that is your dharma. And if in the case that on the opposite side, you have great persons like your spiritual masters, like Bhishma Pita, Dronacharya, Kripacharya, all these great persons, but they, out of false obligation, took the side of Duryodhana. Whereas Arjuna, under the guidance of Yudhishthira Maharaj, and of course Krishna, he was on the righteous path, and therefore he was told that there's nothing wrong, you perform your duty. And by performing your duty of killing, there is nothing demoniac about it. Because as a Kshatriya, it is your duty to fight. And if you fight this battle, nothing will be considered adharma. It is all dharma. Therefore, you simply continue with your practice of Kshatriya principles and fight. And you will not be condemned as a demoniac person. So, as I said in the beginning, that we are also sometimes put in a dilemma in our own life, that when we are pursuing our devotional life, we also come at a cross junction where we have to choose. And it may seem that the activity we may have to choose is kind of irreligious, or it could be not in line with spiritual teachings. But you have to make a judgment according to time, place, circumstances. And you perform this duty on the basis of how these activities which you will perform will impact your spiritual life. So in this connection, Rupa Goswami is saying very clearly that anything which is favorable for spiritual advancement, for devotional life, then that should be pursued. And that which is unfavorable should be rejected. So we have instructions from Rupa Goswami that if we are performing any service and we find ourselves in a dilemma, then we got to look back and think, is this going to be productive for my spiritual life, or it will be negative on my spiritual life? So you have to weigh it out. And generally, if you are well situated in knowledge, then Krishna in your heart will guide you to make the right choice. And if you make the right choice, then in that case, when you pursue that, you'll become perfectly situated in your spiritual life and then your progress. So we have to be very, very mindful that we do not pursue a path which is going to be detrimental to our spiritual progress, especially when we are living in an environment which is not very conducive for spiritual practices. And we live in cities, we associate with people who are non-devotional. We may be working for a company which is also non-devotional. So there are many situations where it kind of creates difficulty for our spiritual progress. But Srila Prabhupada explains that if we pray to Krishna and hear to the voice of the Paramatma in the heart who will guide us, then we will not be misled, even though we may be in the middle of the battlefield. Just like I said, I think in the first talk on this 16th chapter, when I gave the example of Prabhupada, that Prabhupada was in New York City, but he did not feel any separation from Vrindavan, because his mind and his heart was fixed in Vrindavan consciousness. And therefore, even though he is in the hustle and bustle of New York City, he was not feeling any separation from Vrindavan. So similarly, in our own existence, when we are pursuing our jobs, our livelihoods, in either in a country which is not our native country, which I call India, which is more conducive for spiritual life, but still we have to make the best use of whatever situation we are in. So in English we say, make a good use of a bad bargain. So we may be in a very bad bargain situation, but we make a good use. And when you make a good positive use, then of course Krishna will take into consideration that whatever you are doing for the pleasure of Krishna in pursuance of devotional service, devotional life, Krishna will assist us in making progress, even though we may be in a most unspiritual environment. But that environment also can be made spiritualized with your own consciousness. And therefore, it is very important to develop our own consciousness fixed in Krishna. And when we are fixed in Krishna, then we have become Krishna conscious. So when we become Krishna conscious, then it doesn't matter where we are. Our consciousness is Krishna, and is a question of training. So I had to explain this before also, that we have to train our minds to be fixed in Krishna and try to relate every situation we are in with Krishna. And if we train the mind to think that way, then in every situation we will see Krishna. There's Krishna in every situation, because you have to try to connect everything to Krishna, and nothing is separated from Krishna, because as Srila Prabhupada explains, this whole entire creation is Krishna's energy, and therefore if it's Krishna's energy, how it can be separated from Krishna? Although it is taking many different forms in terms of material manifestations, but still this material manifestation is also Krishna's energy, and therefore we can relate to that. And if we start relating to that, then we become very peaceful in our connection to Krishna. And wherever we are, we can remain very peaceful. We will not be disturbed. And when we are not disturbed, then the mind can be focused in whatever service you're doing for our spiritual advancement. As I said before also, that even your job, however mundane it may seem to be, if you pursue your job with a consciousness that this job which I am performing, I will get paid for it. And the money I receive from that, will that be helpful to me to assist me and my family in pursuing Krishna consciousness? So when you see that in a bigger picture, then what happens is that even though the job is mundane, but it is assisting you in performing devotional service, is assisting your family in pursuing of devotional practices and devotional service. And therefore, that's the job, even though it is mundane, it becomes transcendental. So it is very important that we nourish our minds and our hearts with this consciousness. And I am very much convinced that Prabhupada said, if we become Krishna conscious, then everything becomes perfect. Even though in the so-called imperfect world, the world will begin to look perfect to us. Why? Because we are looking from the prism of Krishna. When you look at with Krishna in view, then everything becomes transcendental. It doesn't seem any more mundane or material. So this is what we have to follow in our lives. And as Prabhupada is mentioning here, that a military man is a Kshatriya, and therefore he has to do his job as a Kshatriya. Now all of us, we are not generally in the Kshatriya spirit. Although we can classify ourselves sometimes as Kshatriyas, not in a sense that we are working for or join an army force, but administration. So Prabhupada explains that administration is also a Kshatriya's business. A Kshatriya does administration. So some of us may have jobs which involve administration. So that is Kshatriya. So we have to still have the same principle as Krishna is saying to Arjuna here, that you do justice to your service. And you will then be doing this service according to the principle of Dharma, and there is no more entanglement or incurrence of any karmic reaction. Because when you pursue something according to the principle of Dharma, then there is no karma. Karma only comes when you perform an activity which is not according to religious principles. So whether we are a Sudra or a Vaishya or a Kshatriya or a Brahmana, whatever activities we perform, if it's performed according to our rules, regulations of governing that particular Varna, then it doesn't entangle us. And Srila Prabhupada says the beauty of Krishna consciousness is that we rise even above the four varnas. Even though we may be acting on a Sudra platform or a Vaishya platform or a Satriya or a Brahmana, but we are Vaishnava. A Vaishnava is a higher position where he is connected with the Supreme Lord directly. So therefore, he can perform any activities which is transcendental in terms of devotional service, and it won't be classified or graded as a Sudra activity or a Vaishya activity or Satriya activity or a Brahman activity. Sometimes, when we are at home, in our own homes, we have to clean the home. So you do the sweeping and mopping and cleaning. That is Sudra activity. So after you clean your home very nicely, then you take your shower and put on fresh clothes, and then you go in the kitchen and you cook the meal which is going to be offered to Krishna. So then that is the Vaishya quality. Then you go onto the altar and offer the bhoga to Krishna. That is Brahmana quality. And then in order to clean your house and also at the same time cooking and offering, these are all three qualities. And to administer all this, you're doing administration. So that is Satriya quality. So you are doing all different roles in one. So you're not classified as any of the particular order of Varna, but you're doing all. So therefore, Prabhupada says a Vaishnava is highly placed where he understands perfectly at the right time, at the right place, what service is required. And as Prabhupada many times used the phrase, do the needful. Prabhupada used this phrase many times when disciples were coming to Prabhupada and they said, Prabhupada, we have to do this, we have to do that, and how we can do this. Prabhupada said, just do the needful. What is needed and required, just do it. Don't worry about that, whether it is in this Varna or that Varna. What you are doing is devotional service for the pleasure of the Supreme Lord. And therefore, when you engage in this service of Krishna, then everything becomes perfectly situated and your consciousness is perfect. And that in itself is called Krishna consciousness. So we have to become very much fixed in this Krishna consciousness, in the spirit of understanding the message of Bhagavad Gita. Because Bhagavad Gita is actually a book which is full of instructions. And I generally describe Bhagavad Gita as a manual of mankind. Just like when we buy some electronic equipment, and when you buy the equipment, with the equipment, you get a manual which comes with it. And when you open the package and you see the manual, the first instruction in the manual says, before operating this equipment, please read this manual. And when you read the manual gives you instructions how how everything is going to work. And if you follow the instructions of the manual, then the equipment which you have will function perfectly. Otherwise, it will be trial and error. So in this relation, there's a very funny story of one person. He buys the latest flat screen television from the shop, and he is so excited, he brings it home, opens the package and fixes the television and does everything, without reading the manual. And then he sits down in his comfortable settee and starts pressing the remote control. The television is not switching on. So he's kind of a little concerned now, thinking, why the television not working? It's a brand new television. I just bought it and it should work perfectly. Then he looks up the manual and he says, if any difficulty with this product, call the call center. So he calls up the call center and he says, I have bought this television and this is the model number, this, whatever, but it's not working. So the person at the other end and the call center says, sir, I'll take you through the whole process and let's see what is the problem. So the person at the other end is following the process, saying, okay, you have unpacked the television, you set the screen, it is fixed on this platform, and then the wire is plugged into the PowerPoint, and everything is done. So he's taken through the whole ritual of how to set up the television, and everything is done. And then the caller at the other end, this call center says, now, dear sir, you just press the power switch on your remote. And he keeps pressing the power switch and doesn't work. So he says, doesn't work. Then the person at the other end is kind of confused. We went through the whole procedure as per recommendation of the product. Why it's not working? And he said, okay, let's try the procedure once more again. So we went through the whole procedure again. It still doesn't work. Okay, sir, I think it requires an engineer to come to your home. So we will make an appointment for an engineer to come to your home. But the problem is that if there is nothing wrong with our product, then you'll be charged visiting fee. And if there was definitely something wrong with our product, then there is no charge. So the guy is excited saying, there's something wrong with your product, it doesn't work. So fine, send the engineer. So they made an appointment for the next day. The next day, 10 o'clock sharp, the engineer comes to the home and he says, sir, I'm from the company. I've come to see your television to see how it's not working. So he comes in and he's taken into the living room and he sees the TV, everything. And then, because the engineer is an expert person, he goes through the whole procedure and says, everything fine. And then he sits in front of the TV and press the remote control and hey, presto, TV starts. And the man said, what did you do? He said, I have not done anything. TV is working fine. He said, no, you must have done something. He said, no, I didn't do anything. You saw me, I was right in front of you here. I haven't done anything. And you just continue. Watching now is working fine. So all according to our procedure, you have to give me $50 as a visiting fee, which I came out and there's nothing wrong with the product. And the guy said, no, there's something definitely wrong. I'm not giving you $50. I said, look, sir, see, everything is here as you have done. All I did was I just switched the switch on the PowerPoint and your TV is working. So the person, he fixed everything except he plugged the plug in the PowerPoint, but he did not switch the PowerPoint on. So if you don't switch the on, there's no power coming on, even though it's plugged in. So the point is that sometimes we do many things, but we forget the most important thing. And therefore, the equipment doesn't work. So similarly, Bhagavad Gita is a book of our manual. From the birth till death, Krishna is instructing how we should live our life and proceed with our lives. And as we are proceeding with our lives, then we become perfectly situated in Krishna consciousness without fail. So we have to follow the instructions given by Krishna. Just like the young man was given instruction, he deviated a little bit for just a little bit more comfort, thinking that it will assist him in chanting, and he failed. So similarly, in our own lives, we have to become very, very serious. Prabhupada has given us instruction in his books. We must study his books very seriously, and under the guidance of the spiritual master, we take instructions. And the spiritual master, because he is an expert person in the sense that he is well versed in the scriptures, he would give instructions, one generally for all devotees to follow. This is the basic principle of Krishna Bhakti. And the second, he would give specific instructions to a specific disciple according to their requirement. In this case, I'll give you one more example. There was one nice Grihastha couple in Seattle, in Northwest America, in Washington State. And in Seattle, this husband and wife were staying there, and because they are married, so they are living outside in the house, and they had a small cafe. And in the cafe, they were cooking pure vegetarian food and offering to Krishna and selling it. But sometimes karmis, they cannot understand the principle of abstaining from eating onion and garlic. So this young lady, disciple of Srila Prabhupada, she went to Prabhupada. She said, Srila Prabhupada, this is our dilemma, that we are trying to earn honest living by a vegetarian restaurant which is offered to Krishna as prasadam, and then we sell it to people who come to our restaurant, and whatever money we get, then we use that to maintain our household life. So in this situation, we are finding that it is very difficult to maintain, because many times the customers come and they look at our menu and they find the menu is fine. They have no problem with vegetarian food, but they have a problem with onion and garlic. There is no onion and garlic, and they are so accustomed to eating onion and garlic. So Srila Prabhupada said, in that case, you put onion and garlic in the food. As long as you don't eat, it is fine. Now, this is not a general instruction for everybody, specific to this particular young couple, because they are trying to earn an honest livelihood. So Prabhupada said, if you give a little onion and garlic in their food, it will not be a big deviation from spiritual practice, as long as you are not eating. And Prabhupada said that you don't offer that which is got onion and garlic to Krishna, and you offer other things which are which preparations doesn't require onion and garlic. So at the same time, they will eat some preparations with onion and garlic, and other is prasadam. So that prasadam will definitely purify them, and they will lose taste for onion and garlic as they become more purified by prasadam. But your livelihood will be maintained, and therefore you'll be perfectly situated to perform your devotional activities, and it won't disturb your livelihood. So this instruction was given to a couple, not all couples. So sometimes spiritual master, he would make a special concession to a disciple to help the disciple progress in the spiritual life. So the point is that in our own lives, we must also take this instruction from Bhagavad Gita and follow this very sincerely and pray to Krishna, and Krishna as Paramatma in your heart, he'll guide you. And you also have your spiritual master whom you approach, and with humility you ask him for guidance. And the spiritual master, according to time, place, circumstances, he will make adequate instructions to protect your devotional life. At the same time, you can progress in your devotional journey. So this is a very important aspect of Krishna consciousness that we learn, as in this verse we are learning that one of the qualities of divinity is following the principle of dharma according to our own guna and karma. So this is a very important aspect. We must follow this, and if we follow this sincerely, then we will become very, very nicely situated in our spiritual life. So it is now 9:20, so I will leave some time for questions, because sometimes there are more questions and it takes a long time. So if anybody has any questions or want to share any comments, is more than welcome.
Maharaj, thank you so very much for yet another wonderful class, and particularly the way you encapsulated that the divinity, one of the qualities is the principle of performing our activities according to our dharma, guna and karma, and according to our nature and the karma. So on that, I normally in between, I got a little bit, Maharaj, there were messages coming in that we have lost His Holiness Bhakti Charu Swami Maharaj. And
yeah, I was also getting so many messages on my
I was, in fact, I was wondering because your phone was active. So, Maharaj, what would you like to tell us for this very unfortunate, untimely loss of Maharaj? We would like to hear from you, Maharaj.
Well, I mean, I feel that any loss of a devotee is a big loss, because this is Lord Chaitanya's Sankirtan movement, especially those who are empowered in leadership and who are leading many, many disciples and guiding them. It is a big loss. So unfortunately, the loss of Bhakti Charu Maharaj will be felt all over the ISKCON world, I would say, because I was following since he was diagnosed with coronavirus infection, and there were prayers going on everywhere. And on my Facebook, I have many, many devotees who are his disciples, and they were all posting so many live kirtans and performing prayers and yagyas for his well-being. But then Krishna has other plans for him, I suppose. So we have to accept that spiritual leader, even though in his departure from this material manifestation, he leaves a big legacy of his wonderful qualities and his wonderful preaching. And we look back on that now, and take some solace from that it is indeed very painful to lose one of our stalwart, you can say, Senapati, who was leading very strongly from the front and convincing many, many wonderful people to take to Krishna consciousness. So from my personal understanding and interaction with Bhakti Charu Maharaj was, he's a gentleman, and he was very much, embodiment of that gentleness in his aura, in his interaction, in his dealings. So we have to learn from him that if anything, if we want to offer our condolences to his disciples and pray to Krishna and Prabhupada, that while Bhakti Charu Maharaj was present physically with us, he gave us so much wonderful benefits, just like today as I'm describing, how we can perform our devotional service with proper understanding. He also was one of our leaders who gave wonderful instructions, not just gave instructions, but he lived those instructions. That is the beauty of the whole thing, is that when you live your instructions and by your own example, then that is the greatest gift to mankind, because you are giving by your own example. So we had great examples like that in Srila Prabhupada, and then many of his wonderful disciples whom unfortunately have left us, this material world, who are also very, very wonderful Vaishnavas. And right now, just shortly, we lost Bhakti Charu Maharaj, although there was a lot of hope from the medical team that he's being administered the best medicine and he's been taken care of. And just in the last 2-3 days, the events turned very, very badly in terms of infection and his heart attack and organ failures. And then in the end, of course, the body cannot handle this. So Prabhupada says, when the body is not functioning properly, then the soul departs. So we all are saddened by this loss. And I feel that in one sense, I'm very joyous that there were hundreds and thousands of devotees, disciples and well-wishers all over the world, chanting and praying, performing yagyas for his well-being. And therefore, all these collective positive prayers will definitely, float him away into the lotus feet of Srila Prabhupada, who in turn will place him at the lotus feet of Sri Krishna in the spiritual world. And at the other side, I feel a little saddened that we won't have his wonderful association, his leadership, and he used to lead very wonderful kirtans. So all these things will be a big loss for us. But as I said, it's very difficult to say anything, in situation like this. We kind of lost for words. But I pray now that I was praying, every day that please Krishna, protect him so that he can continue and serve Srila Prabhupada's mission. Because we are still in our immaturity, we haven't matured enough in our movement yet. And all Prabhupada's disciples who are there, we need them very much in order to leave a great legacy which will last for many generations to come, and very strong legacy. So ISKCON will survive into the future, and many, many more wonderful living entities who will take birth will get opportunity to take shelter in the right way, which is taught by Srila Prabhupada in our Krishna consciousness. So right now, as I said, I'm kind of lost for words. You are muted.
I'm
Srila
saying,
Prabhu.
Maharaj, I'm saying your every word that you spoke as Shraddhanjali to His Holiness Bhakti Charu Maharaj is indeed very valuable to all of us, because the verse that you spoke about today, and I was thinking when I heard the news in the middle of your class, Devi Sampat, the transcendental assets, Vimokshaya, which are meant for liberation. And I think Krishna's instructions and your wonderful teachings today are teaching us that we need to really be more focused on collecting these transcendental assets, and that those are also collected by our interactions, deep interactions with sadhu, shastra, and guru. And indeed, we have lost someone who actually has left a lot of transcendental assets for us to work upon, to collect them by his example, as you rightly said. I've had my very intimate associations with him, and each one of them has been always, as you very rightly pointed out, his personal aura. It was very personal, very loving, always met with a hug, encouraging, and many, many more transcendental and spiritual qualities that he manifested during his, Prakat Leela in this world. He certainly has left a lot of assets for the human mankind and for the devotees and for his disciples. And I think more and more the realization that comes more and more is that we need to be very aware of our mortality, and then spend our time well interacting with the devotees, and collect these transcendental assets through very deep engagements. So Maharaj, we are also very grateful for your association. We feel a sense of security, because that's what devotees give each other. So while it's a sad day, but we are also happy that we have the association of sadhus like yourselves to help us and guide us, and in these times of these are difficult times, and as you very rightly pointed out, the maturity aspect. So on that note, Maharaj, we thank you again, and if there is any question or comments by anyone else, please feel free to speak up. Otherwise, we will also not take Maharaj's time. He may have to communicate with some devotees. It's already 9:30 at his end. So anybody else would like to speak or anything, any comments or any questions, please feel free. I will just So we have Subhuddhi Krishna Prabhu from Maharaj. We have our dear friend Subhuddhi Krishna Prabhu from
Hare Krishna.
US.
I'm very happy to see him.
Oh my God, I'm so happy to see him too.
I know, Maharaj, but I just joined at the wrong moment, because just when I joined, this news came. I've been trying to join this group, but it's clashing with my timings. I have some 3-4 classes in a day. And every time I want to join, last Krida Prabhu has been inviting me. And we talked also that we must have your association. And I'm so glad to see you, Maharaj.
Maharaj, both of us, Subudhi Prabhu and myself, connected and spoke for an hour. And in those talks, we had a lot of discussion about our association with you. And I'm so very happy actually to see him along with you. So it brings back a lot of memories, and we need to create more wonderful memories so that we can also further enhance and augment our Devi Sampad, our transcendental assets. Thank you, Subudhi Krishna Prabhu, for your
Hare Krishna.
kind
Hare
association
Krishna, Hare Krishna.
along with Maharaj.
Maharaj, how is your health?
Health is okay by mercy of Guru and Gauranga and
Wonderful.
Vaishnavas.
Yeah. Shoulder? Shoulder is better now?
Shoulder is better. I can move. See, you can see.
Ah.
I freely moving. So
Really glad to see that. Yeah, because last time we met in Mayapur, that shoulder.
yeah,
was
Mayapur. I was going through some strained muscle here,
Correct,
but after that I've taken a number of medicines and different yoga practices, to free up my whole elbow and joints.
Wonderful.
So I'm doing pretty good. Thank you very much, Prabhu. It's
Thank
very
you,
kind
thank
of you
Maharaj.
to help me out there in that in Mayapur.
No, it was a very, very insignificant service. I could do something for you.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna.
Krishna Maharaj, thank you so much, Maharaj. Thank you, Hare Krishna. Hari
Jugal
Bol.
Prabhu, are you still there? Jugal
Yes,
Prabhu?
Prabhu. Yes, yes, Prabhu.
Would you like to
Yeah,
share some thoughts of yours?
I'm quite overwhelmed by this news today about His Holiness Bhakti Charu Maharaj, and we had a special connection with him because many of his disciples in South Africa are gems of devotees, and we have a mutual connection that they serve their spiritual master and they also serve my spiritual master wonderfully. So I'm sure the whole of South Africa and the whole of the world has sunk into a state of depression on hearing this news. And having said that, your words today on the Bhagavad Gita was very soothing and gave us and made it amply clear that we should not seek any accumulation of material assets and just focus on Ananya Bhakti to make our lives successful, because that is the only way we will get a chance to serve His Holiness Bhakti Charu Maharaj again, because he's gone back home, back to Godhead. Thank you very much, Maharaj.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna.
I would like to share, something, because when Maharaj came this time to Florida, some 3 families, I've been preaching here, and some 6 families actually decided to take initiation from him. So one of them could do it earlier, and then 3 families were due for initiation on Saturday, and Maharaj was admitted on Thursday, just 2 days before that. So, and the Maharaj visited us. He visited our home also, because now he's got some connection with Charlotte here, got some disciples here. So I'm just sharing that, these 3 families are now when I hear that, I have to go to them and, make them a little peaceful, because they're really, really, just imagine, about to take initiation after 2 days, and the connection has been cut. But
Anyway, give them solace that, there were many disciples who were going to take Diksha from Srila Prabhupada when Srila Prabhupada also left. But then their good fortune was that Prabhupada left a big legacy after him, that there is always more shelter available for our spiritual connection. And there are many, many wonderful other Vaishnavas in our movement who will definitely give them shelter and solace in terms of their spiritual progress. Of course, that loss is there, because when you give your heart to one spiritual master, and you cannot connect, through Diksha with that person due to some unfortunate situation, then that pain is there. But at the same time, I say, that there is always positiveness there, Then
Oh, yes,
there
right.
is many wonderful Vaishnavas who will definitely guide them in the spiritual life.
Yeah, this is their testing time also, like about their.
Yeah, it's testing time also to see our faith is
Yeah.
not shaken by incidents like this, which are natural. Prabhupada said everybody has to go.
Oh, yes.
But if we get disturbed by that, then that means our faith is not very solidly based in the process of Krishna consciousness.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you, Maharaj. Thank you so much.
Aye.
Okay.
Anybody
So please
else
give them
would like
solace.
Yeah, of course. I will go and do that.
Anybody else would like to share? Otherwise, we will end our session today. Next week when we meet, we can please have all your questions ready. Anybody else? Maharaj, once again, thank you very much from the bottom of our hearts. We're very grateful to you. It's a somber time, a time to meditate. We have to meditate and do deep contemplations all the time, but we are also very grateful that we had you while we heard this news. So for that, we are very grateful. And also, I'm very happy to see my very dear friend, Subhuti Krishna Prabhu, and all the assembled Vaishnavas and Vaishnavis. We're very grateful for your participation and for being in attendance in this very somber time of this great loss that ISKCON has suffered, quite untimely. But as Maharaj very rightly said, that Prabhupada has left us a legacy where we can certainly take shelter and continue our journey back home, back to Godhead. Maharaj, thank you very much again. You have a restful
Hare
sleep.
Krishna, Hare Krishna.
And we'll look forward to your association again next Saturday. And till then, please stay safe and healthy. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
His Holiness Bhakti Charu Swami
Swami
Maharaj.
ki jai.
Jai.
Krishna.
His Divine Grace Srila Prabhupada ki jai. His Holiness Atmanivedana Swami Maharaj ki
Jai.
Mancha kalpatarubhyascha
Sindhu
kripasindhu
Patitanam Pavnebhyo Vaishnavyo
Namo
Namo Namo
Namo Namaha.
Ananta Koti Vaishnav Brinda ki jai.
Jai.